Hello and welcome. Listen, today's message was so encouraging to me. I had to come on and share it with you all. If you have been praying about whether or not to keep going in a certain area, if you feel like there's something that God has truly put on your heart, but you're ready to sit it down because maybe things are coming up against you or people may have been talking about you, it just seems like obstacles and challenges have come to discourage you. If you can relate to that, then I am excited to share today's message with you. If you want to read along with me, so this will be interesting. I feel like I have a lot for you to read along. Definitely get into the book Nehemiah as a whole. I'm going to be reading from Nehemiah 6. I may jump around to a few other places, but if you want to read along, go ahead and grab Nehemiah. So I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, we're going to jump into this word that I pray encourages you all today. If you have been feeling like you're ready to throw in the towels, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. All right, so welcome back. Let's jump into today's message about not aborting the plan. I know sometimes when we feel called to something, when we've been praying about something, the revelation of it, like the idea of it is so exciting. Starting something is so exciting. We can feel like just ready to run. But then as we start to progress, what typically happens is that we can get discouraged. Things will come up against us to have us wanting to quit. And that's what Nehemiah is about. Like this story is so inspiring to me. So I'm actually going to start from chapter 6, or I'm going to go back. I'm going to start from chapter 2, and I want to just read a couple of things to you that were, it's inspiring, but then as things unfolded, it started getting it started getting challenging. So this is when they got to the place that they wanted to start rebuilding. So this is Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 16. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, for I had not yet told the Jews or priests or nobles or officials or any other workers. And this is when he had the revelation to rebuild the wall. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned down. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem so that we will no longer be a disgrace. The first thing that's so powerful to me is that when Nehemiah talked about this, he didn't tell everyone. He said, no one even knew where he had gone. He had gotten the king's approval and he went on like he knew what the vision was. He was ready to step out. For many of you, everyone doesn't need to know your plans. God did not reveal everything that he's doing through you to them. So sometimes we can get stuck because we're so willing to wait for other people's approval. We're so willing to wait for someone else to say, it's a good idea, now go for it. Nehemiah wasn't about that life. Nehemiah said, they didn't even know where I was at. But I knew that I saw the trouble that we were in. He knew that the wall was in ruins. Its gates had been burned down. Let us rebuild this wall of Jerusalem so that we will no longer be a disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God upon me and what the king had said to me. That is so powerful to me because you all know I always talk about let your light so shine before men that they'll see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Nehemiah was evidence of this. He's like, look, not only am I ready to take on this task and carry out this vision, I'm excited because you all are going to see how gracious God's hand has been upon me. That doors had already started opening for him to get into this position to rebuild this wall. So let us start rebuilding, they replied, and they set their hands to this good work. They said it and they did it. They said it and they did it. And that's verse 18 where they said, let us start rebuilding, they replied, and they set their hands to do this good work. And y'all, there's so much to read here, but I want to, for time purposes, I again encourage you, like I always encourage you all, go back and just read this for yourself. Pray about it, to get understanding and how God is revealing this to you. But it's just such an encouraging message. So I'm at chapter 6, and I'm going to go down to, I'll start at verse 1. When Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left, though to that time I had not yet installed the doors in the gates, Sanballat, Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were planning to harm me. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave the same reply. Now, if you read this, there's so much more again, but If you read even further, there were so many things they had to do in this process. They were holding spears. Some would hold spears while others were building because they weren't willing to let the work be sacrificed by naysayers, by negativity, by people that were planning to harm. And this is something that I believe we all have to get into this deep understanding that Nehemiah had. When God is calling you to something, he provides the provision, he provides the protection. God gave him, and he talked about that prayer at the beginning, that my way will be successful. And it is so encouraging because I just want to say this to you all today, that when God is calling you to something, don't slow down because of what someone else has to say about the vision that you've been giving. If it's been given to you, it's been given to you. Everyone didn't have the blueprint that Nehemiah had. Everyone didn't have the luxury to be working for the king like Nehemiah was. Everyone wasn't in the same position to carry out what he was called to carry out. And the same is true for you and I. Everyone can't understand what God is doing through you. Some people will look at everything that you're doing and say, it's wrong. You're doing it wrong. Come meet me over here. How he said, come meet me in the village so I can talk you out of this thing that God has placed on your heart. And just because we're doing things differently, it wasn't on everyone's heart to lead to rebuild that wall. It was on Nehemiah's heart. That doesn't say that rebuilding the wall was wrong. It just wasn't on their heart. And so even you may find, I would say from a faith standpoint, other believers that may say you're doing this wrong or you're doing this right. You may find just out and about in your life, in your business, in your job, in your relationship. Maybe they're in a marriage and you're doing your marriage wrong. Other people may say, well, God didn't give them the same anointing and the same calling that you have. They weren't meant to sustain what you have been able to sustain. They're not called to lead in the area that you're called to lead. And so some people simply will not get it. And some people's intentions are, as we see here, literally to harm you and talk you out of, move you out of that place of anointing, that place where God's hand is breathing on you, where he said, God's hand is on me. This thing that I'm doing, God's hand is on it. That's powerful. We can get into that place. I remember a message a long time ago that was about good versus God. Like we can get into that place of all these good ideas, good strategies, good things. But when God's hand is on it, I'm telling you, there is just a smoothness with it. There is just so much like revelation with it. And even with the work that I do with entrepreneurs, it's just so beautiful because I always talk about like the strategy. Like we can strategize all day long, but when God's hand is on a thing, like Jesus is my PR. Like I'm telling you, it's a different level. So I want to share that with you all today, or I wanted to share this with you all today, because I know that many of you may be getting discouraged because of other people, because of and I might be butchering their names, but because of the Sanballats, the Tobias, the Geshems, the Arab. Like many people may be, and his name is like Geshem the Arab. I'm not calling out, a whole culture of people, but my point is that Nehemiah's response is the blueprint for us. How do you respond when people are coming at you and telling you that's not a good idea? You're silly for thinking that. No one else has ever done it. We're in a crisis right now. You shouldn't even be worried about that. This, that, and the third. They were in a crisis. And many things were happening around, but Nehemiah knew the plan of God for his life and he was able to walk in it. And so when that came, he'd said 4 times he sent that message. I'm doing a great work. I don't know about y'all. I don't know what you're trying to do. I feel that you're planning to harm me, but I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. Why should the work stop while I come down and deal with y'all? And that's how many of us need to start approaching distractions. I'm doing a great work. If it's causing you to stop the work that God has called you to, why would you come down? Why should the work cease while I come down and deal with who's talking about me? Why I come down and deal with how someone's not supporting me? Why I come down and deal with anything that's standing in the way of where God has called you in this season? Why should the work cease while you stop and come down and deal with it? The work, he said 4 times he sent that. The work's not ceasing. I'm not stopping. Like he said, all that was left at verse 1 was the doors. Like, look, I already put the wall up. And again, if you read it for yourself, you're going to see all of that process. It wasn't easy for them to get that wall up. There were distractions. There were obstacles that were coming, but they obviously went past those obstacles because everything was up except the doors. And that's even, in my opinion, symbolic that sometimes we can be so close. And that's what I mean by don't abort the plan. We're so close. And the only challenge right now is that we're leaving the door open. God's moved you out of that season. You've moved away from those people. You've moved out of that relationship. You've moved from that situation. And sometimes we can be so tempted to leave the door open to go back. It said like a dog returning to its vomit, which is disgusting, but you get what I'm saying? Like sometimes we can open the door and allow that thing back in and block what God is trying to do in our lives. And that's the danger. That's a challenge when it comes to aborting it. This is not the season to keep the door open. Put the doors up. You're doing a good work. Why should the work cease while you stop and come down and deal with anything that's outside of God's plan for you? So that is my encouragement for you all today. If this encouraged you, tell someone, tag someone. You can stay connected with me across social media at Erica Empowers. If you have not done so already, subscribe. Subscribe here to the channel. That is the best way that you can support what we're doing. And if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a visionary, if you are a powerhouse with a message and you're ready to turn your message into a movement, then I invite you to join me at the Amplify Her Lounge. You can go to amplifyherlounge.com, and that's where I do just support entrepreneurs, visionaries with their message and everything else. So not just support. It's actually really exciting and I love doing it. But I don't want to prolong this video too long. So that's it, you all. Go back again, subscribe. And if you need more encouragement, go back and check out some of my previous messages to just keep you ready to step out and do what God is calling you to do. I will see you in the next video. Take care.